When human labor undergoes a massive realignment, the Vatican historically steps in to act as a global moral brake on unchecked industry. Pope Leo XIV set this precedent 135 years ago. His 1891 encyclical, Rerum Novarum, was a direct confrontation with the factory bosses of the First Industrial Revolution. He was responding to a technological rupture that had turned workers into extensions of machines, demanding that human dignity be placed above industrial productivity. In 2026, Pope Leo XIV adopted the Leonine name specifically to address the AI era. His first encyclical, Magnifica Humanitas, is framed as the modern successor to that 1891 document. To the Church, artificial intelligence is not just a software update, it is a societal shift equivalent in scope and danger to the rise of the factory. The release of the document was unusually high stakes. Rather than delegating the task to cardinals, the Pope presented the encyclical personally at the Vatican. His central thesis is that technology is never neutral. It takes on the specific moral characteristics of the people who build, finance, and regulate it. Anthropic was the only frontier AI lab invited to the presentation. The Vatican chose to stand beside a company that has explicitly built its public identity on the concepts of safety and interpretability. The chairs for OpenAI, Google DeepMind, and Elon Musk's xAI were left conspicuously empty. By curating an audience of the industry's most palatable representatives, the Vatican created a launch event that arguably shielded the very power structures the encyclical was written to challenge. The document focuses heavily on concentration, the danger that AI's power, data, and wealth will fall into the hands of a microscopic few, widening the gap between the included and the excluded. This chart shows the scale of that concentration. The resources and user data held by consumer-facing giants like Google and OpenAI represent a level of central control that the Pope warns will leave the rest of society behind. The encyclical warns that these business models often force workers to adapt to machine speeds, prioritizing algorithmic efficiency over human dignity in the workplace. By elevating Anthropic as its sole conversation partner, the Vatican risks validating a world where the moral framework of AI is determined by a small, elite group of builders. A warning against the concentration of power loses its force when the greatest aggregators of that power are not required to answer the charge. Leo XIV directs his most uncompromising condemnation toward the use of artificial intelligence in warfare. He argues that autonomous weapons lower the moral threshold for violence by removing the human face from conflict and reducing human beings to data points on a target list. The document goes so far as to state that the Church's traditional just war theory must now be overcome in favor of dialogue, as no algorithm can make war morally acceptable. This critique lands hardest on the industry's most defense-adjacent figures and those with explicit geopolitical ambitions, leaders like Elon Musk, whose labs weren't in the room. A reckoning over the dehumanization of algorithmic conflict fails if the industry's most militarized protagonists are not there to receive the message. The lesson of the launch is clear. A broadside against an industry is only effective if it is delivered to the entire industry, not just its most responsible members. If technology takes on the character of its makers, then whoever is granted proximity to moral authority inevitably helps define that character. The Vatican has already signaled that this was a first step, approving the creation of a new interdisciplinary commission on artificial intelligence to maintain a permanent dialogue with the industry. This commission will serve as the definitive measure of whether the Church is willing to move past the polite, narrow staging of its first presentation. The Church's influence in the algorithmic age will be determined by its willingness to invite the tech giants that make it uncomfortable to a seat at the table.